as far as the SEC and how it shakes out when Texas and Oklahoma, I don't know that you and I've discussed this actually. Um, what would benefit Tennessee most in terms of the Alabama rivalry that is year in and year out and such a special part of the history of Tennessee? Is that sacred to you? Should it be sacred, Caleb?
I think it should be sacred, but I think if you're thinking for Tennessee's sake, I think that I think the best thing for Tennessee would be a pod system, because quite honestly, if you do a pod system, there's no way you can do a pod system and not have Tennessee in the same pod with Vanderbilt and Kentucky. And so, I mean, that's what I actually want to see with the SEC, and they're not going down this road, but I think there's a great way where they can protect all the rivals. And I think that is to keep the divisions, do 2 8-team divisions, and move Alabama and Auburn over to the east.
Agreed.
Move Missouri over to the west.
Agreed.
And then all of a sudden, the only of the 10 most played rivalries that will be in existence when that SEC forms, the only one that wouldn't be annual at that point would be Alabama and Mississippi State. I don't think Mississippi State fans are going to complain about not having to play Alabama every year anymore. So,
well, and that's not. I mean, that's not a permanent rivalry that everybody looks forward to. Basically, you're protecting the permanent division rivalries, and there are 2. There's Georgia, Auburn, and there's Tennessee, Alabama. Other than that, LSU, Florida is kind of neat. I mean, I like the colors, I like the talent on the field, but there's no other one other than those 2 with historic significance that you go out of your way to keep.
Right, exactly. And so if you move, and that's the thing, if you move those 2 over, you've got all the rivalries, the divisional rivalries that already exist, and then you bring back more meaning to these 2 interdivisional rivalries with Alabama and Auburn, in Tennessee and Georgia. You're absolutely right. And so I think it's perfect. You bring more meaning to Texas and Oklahoma, Texas and Texas A&M, Arkansas and Missouri on that other side. I feel like LSU has never really had the most natural rival, so it's always been with Ole Miss, Mississippi State anyway. And so I think that, I think the best way, and also people keep talking about a pod system and no divisions. I got to be honest, I think that's disastrous, because I think that I know the divisions can be unfair, but Dave, you're going to have probably 2 teams playing for the SEC title one year, only playing because they got the easiest draw in the history of the world that year in the SEC schedule. I don't think with 16 teams, I don't think that's possible.
Is it at all possible just to do through 16 and just like they did back in the day? Remember,
look at
10, and then it would just, the SEC champion was just whoever finished number 1.
But but it was never effective to me, because look at the records of some of those champions, and they weren't always the best team. They had the best draw, and also you had teams playing. You had some SEC teams playing 7 games and some playing 6. And so my best example for that is historically Kentucky, 1950. Tennessee beats Kentucky that year. Tennessee finishes 5-1 in the SEC. Kentucky got the Sugar Bowl invite because they played 1 extra game and they finished 6-1. That's why they get to claim that national championship that they won that year. And that's just, I think that I get people don't like divisions. I get, and people complain about it in the NFL all the time, but I think it's the most effective democratic way, if you must, like from a democracy way of crowning a champion. Because otherwise, the only difference, if you have 18 divisions, you play all 7 teams in your division, and then you play 2 from the other division, and that's on a rotational basis. Now, there's still going to be a little bit of a disparity in schedule, but it's a disparity over 2 games, not over 8 games, if that makes sense.
I cannot bring myself to say it, but for the betterment of competition, drop the Alabama-Tennessee rivalry. But in my heart, that's what my head says, Caleb. But in my heart, I'm like, that's something special. That's losing something. And I know progress is progress. And at some point, we went from diesel to unleaded, and we'll go from unleaded to electric energy. And I get all that. And that's progress. And that's neat. But there's some part of me that likes the way my little coupe drives, and the fact that it's gas powered and I can hear the engine, and it's not like an electric car where I can't hear it. And I'm the same way with the Alabama-Tennessee rivalry. It's just cool. And to lose that, maybe you make progress, maybe it's more fair, but my heart can't go down that road, Caleb. I love college football and the SEC too much.
I agree. And I think what makes it harder, though, with our hearts is because this discussion is happening just as Tennessee finally got back to being competitive with Alabama again. 5 years ago, I'd have said drop the rivalry because Alabama was just – there were – since that long streak in 2007 when Saban came, the only two times Tennessee put up a fight against Alabama was 2009 and 2015. They lost both of those games. Although Butch Jones said they were going to be competitive because they had a better juice bar than Alabama, so they were going to out-recruit Alabama. But – yeah, I get your point. But my head doesn't even say drop the series because my head says move Alabama and Auburn to the East, and I think two divisions are still the most effective way to crown a champion. Everybody talks about the one poll and random draws. If you're playing 9 conference games and there's 16 teams, there are going to be vastly different schedules among teams in the SEC, and you're going to just pick the top 2 to play for the SEC championship, and you will probably get the top 2 that got the easiest draw every year. Now, maybe the SEC championship doesn't matter as much anymore with the 12-team playoff, but I don't know. I think there's something still to be said about winning your conference.
Yeah. John said, who cares about tradition now? We will have too many teams to care. It used to be a recruit would come because of a team. Now NIL. Smoky Mountain Red said, I thought one pool was the way it was going. But if it isn't, and it is the pools, is it 4 pools? I haven't heard anything definitive. And I don't think there's been anything announced as far as one pool or pools or divisions. Caleb, I'd say they'll wait for that up until the year before would be my guess.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think they really know the best way to do it. I've heard four pods, either four pods where you have 3 regular opponents you play every year, and then you have a total random draw of the other 6 or whatever each year. And there's no actual divisions. I'm just not a fan of it. By the way, one day I will say that, down the line where I'd move, where the SEC might expand is, look, I don't think we're that far down the road from Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, and NC State joining the SEC. I think those are going to be the next 4 teams to join the SEC. Y'all heard it here first: Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, NC State. And I think then you're going to have 5 teams per division in 20-team division.
That wouldn't surprise me. The 2 I would like to get in there. Again, this goes back to the heart versus head. I know they're not the best selection from a business standpoint, but West Virginia, who I think is a very SEC filled town, if you've ever been there, and the other is Georgia Tech because of tradition. But I agree with you. I think to go get the teams you mentioned would be a better business move.